Hey everybody, Captain Bringdown here. Seem to have made myself very popular with my defense of misanthropy. Two things. I don't think human beings are worthless. I think that they're actually pretty cool, but as I said, don't trust them, because see, guy walks into his doctor's office and says, "Doc, it hurts when I do this." So his doctor says, "Don't do that." Problem solved. And I did also make the analogy that even lab rats tend to figure things out. So why do we keep making the same mistakes over and over and over? I think it's not because we are making the same mistake. I think it is because we are perpetuating one continual mistake. So, as I said, when it comes down to time for a change into what? Because we've been doing it, and, okay, Tata DeMellion brought up an interesting point. When I said so much for evolution, I probably should have used the word advancement, because I do realize that evolution and the evolutionary process is a very, very long one, and 20,000 years is not a heck of a long time when it comes to that. So we'll stand on that one for now. When all else fails and I pick the wrong words, I usually retreat to my library to find somebody who can say it better. This time it is Mr. Albert Camus, a book called The Myth of Sisyphus and Other Essays. Just going to read you the very beginning of the first essay here. It's called An Absurd Reasoning, Absurdity and Suicide. There is but one truly serious philosophical problem, and that is suicide. Judging whether life is or is not worth living amounts to answering the fundamental question of philosophy. All the rest, whether or not the world has 3 dimensions, whether the mind has 9 or 12 categories, comes afterwards. These are games. One must first answer. Myth of Sisyphus. Is life worth living? That is the question. That is the question. That's Shakespeare, Hamlet. To be or not to be? That is the question. Whether 'tis nobler to suffer, suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or by opposing end them. He's talking about suicide. Is it better to go forward and suffer the slings and arrows, or by opposing, slitting your wrists, taking the poison, popping your brains, end them? My idea, yes, it is most definitely better to go on. I mean, even if I had the misfortune of being hired to scream, "Somebody come and kick me in the testicles," every time Lindsay Lohan did a line of coke, that would not be a good life. But any day above ground is better than one below it. Now, of course, there are extenuating circumstances. I mean, there are some very painful diseases out there. So, I mean, if your body is riddled with cancer and you just cannot take the pain anymore, I probably wouldn't help you, but I wouldn't blame you for doing it. Killing yourself because your girlfriend left you, that's just plain dumb, and we're probably better off without you. Myth of Sisyphus. Basically, it's all about the philosophical question of suicide. His other one, The Rebel, well, one of his other ones, The Rebel, is all about the philosophical question of whether it's okay or not to murder people. We'll get into that one later. But with the whole suicide thing, is it better to live, or is it better to not live? Even those of us, those of you, who believe in an afterlife, in a God, in a meaning of life, all that other stuff, still want to live. It is the one defining factor that keeps humanity moving forward, is the desire, the need to live. Which is why I am so astounded by human beings always finding ways to fuck ourselves up. We know what we are doing will eventually lead us to our destruction, but we keep doing it. Any species that actively participates in its own destruction cannot be considered rational. And that is what I'm saying when I'm saying that human beings are not to be trusted. We are irrational. We use reason to justify our lack of reason. Go figure. I'm not calling anybody out, because this is a discussion, and I'm not going to make it personal, because it doesn't need to get personal. But all of you out there railing against the system, take a look at how and where you are railing against the system. The mere fact that you are giving money to a telecommunications company to be on and receive messages from YouTube means that you are feeding into the system. The house that is built around you is part of the system. The running shoes you wear, the store you buy them in, is part of the system. The system cannot exist without us feeding into it. So if you truly believe what you say about this great evil system, give away everything and see if you can do it. I'm not calling you weak, but I don't think you can. So where do you go from there? Human beings will always have their own personal best interests at heart. Goes back to the old philosophical question, do we do good deeds for the sake of doing them, or because we feel that we should, or because we are expecting some sort of reward, even if it is merely us feeling good about what we've done? Think about that. Now I can hear it, this wall of "but Baron" screaming out of YouTube. And you're saying, but Baron, don't you rail against the system? I'll admit, I'm not too fond, but I will also concede that the system has been very good to me. But if you go back and look through all my videos, you will find that I don't necessarily rail against the system. I rail against the way that people rail against the system. And it's sort of that whole wet paint thing. What did you expect? Now, you can fight the system, and you can lose. Or you can work within the system and try to keep some aspect of yourself alive. Or you can just completely give in to the system and just let it live your life for you. To each their own, I suppose. And because we will always have those three choices, humanity will always be divided. So, that's my defense, and I'm sticking to it. For me, it all comes down to meaning. People don't jive with senseless events. This is what religion thrives on. The human belief that we are somehow special, better, chosen. We are a freak accident of nature. But it is our utter insignificance that I really think makes us special. You take a look at the stars at night, and just by the laws of averages, there have to be hundreds of millions of populated planets out there. But by populated, it may just be amoebas or weird head-headed blue creatures or something. But it's pretty arrogant to think that we're the only ones here. But if we are, that in itself is very special. But it's a freak accident. It has no meaning. It just happened. And this brings us to existentialism. One of my most treasured possessions, often to the great annoyance of roommates, is my sticky dart shotgun. I've had endless hours of joys with this baby. Now, this toy would not exist were it not for the fact that somebody thought of it, designed it, and made it. It would not be what it is were it not meant to be that way. Its essence preceded its existence. It could only be exactly what it is. Many people argue that human beings are exactly the opposite. Our existence precedes our essence. We are thrust into existence from oblivion, at which point we begin the search for meaning. And that's where the fun starts, because there isn't one. It is the meaning of how we live our lives, not why we live our lives, that we need to concentrate on. Which brings me back to good old Albert, myth of Sisyphus. For those of you who don't know, Sisyphus is a character I suppose, is a figure from Greek mythology. There's many versions of the story, but the long and the short of it is he cheated death, pissing off the gods in doing so. And when they finally got their hands on him, he was sentenced to eternity of rolling a boulder up a hill. The gods had told him that when the boulder gets to the top, he will be set free. But of course, just as he gets to the top, it becomes too heavy and it rolls back down again. So he's doing this for eternity. Camus argues that as soon as Sisyphus realizes that this is his lot in life, this is what he must do, this is his existence, and resigns himself to that, the gods can no longer punish him because he has accepted what is going on. Another analogy I like to use is, say, for instance, well, I'll just say the tatterdemalion and I find ourselves magically transported, Kurt Vonnegut style, to a desert island somewhere. Well, let's actually make it tropical. It'll be easier that way. Now, we get up and we look around. We're like, holy crap, we're on this tropical island in the middle of nowhere. Say, for instance, I sit down and just start crying. Why are we here? Why are we here? Why are we here? Why did they do this to me? Why are we here? Why are we here? Meanwhile, the tatterdemalion starts gathering firewood, food, drinking water, starts building a shelter, and says, well, you know what? Here I am, let's just get on with getting on. While I starve to death and get heat stroke and die, crying on the beach, trying to figure out why I am here, he has basically living Swiss Family Robinson style, living it big time on the tropical island, because he realized the condition, he realized his fate, and he just got on with getting on. This brings me to my last point, the point of the not being a pessimist, but being a non-practicing optimist. If my last video pointed out anything, it's the fact that either human beings are consistently making the same mistake, or they are perpetuating one continual mistake. But somehow we always manage to squeak through. We're like some fucking annoying, Sunday cinema character who just at the end of the movie manages to find a way to escape. A lot of people will suffer for it. A lot of people will die for it. But we will go on. And that just seems to be what we do. And it may be the greatest thing about human beings is that even though we continually try to kill ourselves, we just don't die. Until we find a way to actually, en masse, in an instant, actively kill ourselves, like a nuclear war or something where everyone was wiped out, this whole passive suicide thing of ours will just keep droning on and on and on. I was going to try and end it on a high note, but I'm running up about 14 minutes now, so what can you do? So, bring it on. That was my answer to your reply. No, this is my reply to your reply, so have at her.